Pan Alley was the publishing center for popular music in the late 1800s through the mid 1900s. Many of the country's music publishers had offices in the Tin Pan Alley district. The naming of Tin Pan Alley is attributed to Monroe Rosenfeld, a reporter for the New York Herald and a sometime composer himself. When he wanted to write a story about the local music scene, it was suggested that he contact Harry von Tilzer. As he sat in the great man's office, he listened to dozens of pianos banging away and was struck by the thought that they sounded like someone pounding on tin pans. He filed his story and called the area Tin Pan Alley. Yes, there really was a place called Tin Pan Alley. In fact, there were several places. Before getting its distinctive name, the popular music center flourished in the late 1800s around Union Square, where the sounds of music filled the air every night. There was Tony Pastor's Musical Hall, where people like Lillian Russell and Eddie Foy held forth. Across the way was the Academy of Music, America's premier opera house, which was so socially elevated that even the Vanderbilts could not obtain their own box seats. Nearby was the Alhambra, which hosted gigantic musical extravaganzas. When these and other legitimate theaters moved upon, Tin Pan Alley followed along with them to 28th Street and eventually moved with the main stem on up to the West 40s. However, Tin Pan Alley was always as much a spirit and idea as it was a geographic location. It went where the action was, and like a herd of lemmings, the denizens of Tin Pan Alley followed the action to their deaths. But while they lived, they certainly made a joyful noise. The history of Tin Pan Alley is a history of the United States as seen by its tunesmiths. We find an incredible variety of materials documented in songs which do indeed seem to have mirrored every aspect of American life from the beginning of Tin Pan Alley in the 1890s to the latest digital technology. We can chronicle the changing musical tastes of Americans, along with our social, economic, and political concerns, by the kinds of popular music we bought, played, and listened to, from the tearjerker to the latest rock song. During the Tin Pan Alley era, a song's popularity was determined not by the number of records it sold, but by the number of copies of sheet music it sold. Tin Pan Alley was the name given to the publishing business that hired composers and lyricists on a permanent basis to create popular songs. The publishers used extensive promotion campaigns to market these songs to the general public in sheet music form with attractive covers. By the late 1800s, over 500,000 youngsters were taking piano lessons. Piano's popularity created demand for sheet music. As the demand grew, so did the number of music publishers. Throughout Tin Pan Alley's 70 years, popular music was developed in a variety of forms: love ballads, syncopated tunes, Latin American music, nonsense songs, show tunes, and marketed for adults. The music was presented and promoted in sheet music form for voice and piano. The public was induced to purchase the music sheets when they saw and heard their favorite performers incorporate the songs into their acts, first in the theater and in vaudeville, then through recordings, first on cylinders, then on flat discs, which rotated 78 times per minute, later on radio, then in films, and finally on television. Before the 1890s, such occupations as composer, lyricist, and even publisher of popular music did not exist. This is not to say that popular songs were not written and published, but that nobody was hired expressly to compose and write them on demand. That demand came later, after the alley was firmly established, either from the stars who wanted songs suited to their personalities, or else from the publishers who demanded songs of a type which a rival publisher had and which the public was currently buying. After the vaudeville era, when radio captured audiences, Airtime became a precious commodity, and song pluggers, also known as contact men, concentrated on those orchestra leaders and singers who had their own programs. Bing Crosby, for example, with regular exposure on both radio and in the movies, became the greatest plug a song could have in the 1930s. While getting the song recorded by as many performers as possible was desirable, the main thrust of plugging a song was to sell copies of sheet music. Along with getting a star to use a song in the act or on the air, publishers discovered early in the history of Tin Pan Alley that the song's cover played a most important role in the selling of the popular sheet music. The covers shown in this presentation show the great care the publishers took with them. Sometimes a combination of photograph and illustration was used. Sometimes a performer's photograph appeared on the cover. A performer's photograph on a cover served as an incentive for the performer to retain the song and to encourage fans of the performer to buy the sheet as a souvenir. By the turn of the century, cover art was a significant element in helping to sell copies of sheet music. Today, these covers often comprise the only extant photographs of some of the places and people of this era, giving the covers added desirability, importance, and value. The artwork of each era in Tin Pan Alley's history is distinctive, as many people collect sheet music today as collect postcards, posters, and other works of popular art. Among the important factors in the rise of Tin Pan Alley was the rapid growth of vaudeville. Theaters were constructed across the country in great numbers beginning in the late 1800s. Names like Strand, Lyceum, and Orpheum sprouted up in towns and villages everywhere. All were supplied talent by booking agencies such as William Morris and Keith Albee, most of which were located in New York City. Each year, before they set out to troupe across the country, vaudeville performers would stop at publishing houses for songs they might use to freshen up their acts. For a star, staff composers and lyricists would create special material for their exclusive use. Tin Pan Alley songs did not, by and large, deal directly with the troubling issues of their times. Popular songs and the musical plays and films in which they appeared instead typically aimed to help people escape the pressures of daily life. Both in lyrical content and performance style, the Tin Pan Alley song explored the ideal of romantic love. Unlike the old European ballads, in which the action of characters was often narrated from a vantage point outside the singer's own experience, the first-person lyrics characteristic of Tin Pan Alley songs, suggested in such song titles as What'll I Do, Why Do I Love You, I Get a Kick Out of You, and Somebody Loves Me, allowed the listener to identify his or her personal experience more directly with that of the singer. Tin Pan Alley songwriters, by and large, adopted a down-to-earth manner of speech, as in songs like Jeepers Creepers, Where'd You Get Those Peepers?, that suggested that any working stiff could experience the bliss of romantic love or, through the torch song, suffer the heartbreak of a romance gone sour. The sheet music covers shown during this presentation represent a few of many Tin Pan Alley songs. Not all were popular. Not all were successes. How many of these have you heard of? How many of these can you sing? Between 1892 and 1900, the most popular hits were After the Ball, The Man Who Broke the Bank at Monte Carlo, The Little Lost Child, The Sidewalks of New York, The Band Played On, Mr. Johnson, Turn Me Loose, There'll Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight, Warmest Baby in the Bunch, On the Banks of the Wabash, At a Georgia Camp Meeting, Hearts and Flowers, Hello My Baby, and A Bird in a Gilded Cage. Are the songs from the first decade of the 1900s any more familiar? Mighty Like a Rose, Bill Bailey, Won't You Please Come Home, In the Good Old Summertime, Give my regards to Broadway, In the Shade of the Old Apple Tree, Shine Little Glowworm, Shine on Harvest Moon, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, By the Light of the Silvery Moon, and Down by the Old Mill Stream are listed as the most popular songs during the first decade of the 20th century. The songs that were popular between 1910 and 1920 might be more familiar to you. They include Come Josephine and My Flying Machine, Let Me Call You Sweetheart, Alexander's Ragtime Band, Some of These Days, Peg of My Heart, The Darktown Strutters Ball, Kickity Katy, God Bless America, Oh By Jingo, Swanee, and Whispering. The Japanese Sandman begins the most popular songs listed for 1920 through 1930. Also included are Carolina in the Morning, Lovesick Blues, Way Down Yonder in New Orleans, Yes We Have No Bananas, I Cried for You, Everybody Loves My Baby, All Alone, Sweet Georgia Brown, Babyface, Ain't She Sweet, My Blue Heaven, and Happy Days Are Here Again, published in 1930. Symbolically, Tin Pan Alley died on April 12, 1954, when Bill Haley and his Comets recorded Max Friedman and Jimmy DeKnight's Rock Around the Clock. It had been published a year earlier and would not create a sensation until a year later, but Haley's recording for Decca would become the first international rock and roll bestseller. By the time Elvis Presley recorded his first disc for RCA Victor, Heartbreak Hotel, in January 1956, there was no doubt that the era of Tin Pan Alley was over. From that point on, the list of each year's top 10 songs would be almost entirely composed of rock and roll numbers, which were not sold to any great extent in sheet music form. Popular music, which had been originally created for adults who went to vaudeville shows, theaters, nightclubs, and saloons, and who bought sheet music to sing and play, became dominated by teenagers who valued the performance more than the written music and words. Today we will attempt to take you back in time while performing songs popularized during the Tin Pan Alley era. Thank you for coming. We hope you enjoy this performance.
Gonna pack my cares in a whistle and blow them all away. What if I've been unlucky? Really, I ain't got a thing. There's a time I always feel happy, as happy as a king. When the red, red